and judgment in the matter regarding the legitimacy of the signature of the will of the late AmaZulu King Goodwill Zwelithini kaBhekuzulu will be handed down in the Pietermaritzburg High Court this morning. In January, you'll remember that the court heard arguments about why his first wife, Queen Sibongile Dlamini-Zulu, was entitled to half of the late king's estate because she was married to him in community of property. Well, let's get an update now on where this matter stands at the moment. Let's talk to our senior politics reporter, that's Ziyanda Ngcobo, who is down in KZN for us. Ziyanda, good morning to you. Put us in picture then. What might the court come to? What decision will likely result from that court?
Well, Oli, I'm waiting for Judge Madondo to actually tell us what he thinks about the arguments that were made here in January, and they were in two parts. The first was about whether or not the first wife of the late king, that's Queen Sibongile Dlamini-Zulu, is, according to civil law, entitled to half of the king's estate. The second part of the arguments was whether or not the late king's will was actually forged, and that part of the proceedings was brought by his two daughters of the first wife of the late king. And so we heard a testimony from written testimony from a written expert, I should say. But Koli, just to take the viewer back, part of the argument really ultimately boiled down to civil law versus customary law, because at some stage the first wife's lawyers tried to adjust their initial application to say, well, actually, we need to have the other 5 marriages of the late king declared null and void in order then for her to be able to say she's entitled to half of his estate. Why was that the case? Because the court asked the lawyers of the first wife, that's Nigel Redman, about, first of all, why would you bring this application at this particular stage, given the fact that the executor has not even declared how the assets will be split up? But someone who was monitoring those proceedings closely with me is legal expert Mpumelelo Zigalala. I mean, what are the implications of the outcomes of this case? We know that King Zwelithini Zwelithini has not been coronated, hence he wasn't even able to address the state of the province address. But according to customs, the family is saying it's a done deal.
They're saying that, but I think it's in the hands of the president, in which he would have to say there are 2 submissions that I've received from allegedly one family. Which one is going to take precedence in this particular matter? And he may have to deploy his mediation proceedings again in terms of trying to say to the Zulu royal family, let us discuss this matter once more time. Come with that one name, come with a definite name so that I'll be able to execute my duties as per the Act. But coming back to this matter today, let's remember, the most important question is, why do you need a declarator if no one has ever challenged your existence or the legitimacy of your marriage? That's the first question which the court will have to answer. If the court then says, yes, I'm granting you that particular declarator, the next question is, what bearing is it going to have? 1, on the throne, 2, on the estate. Let's also remember that when it comes to the administrative of estates, our case law has developed to such an extent that our courts have said we want to protect the interest of all the wives. So regardless of whether we have declared your marriage as the only one, the mere fact that you are raising this particular point now and the protection of the interest of the other wives, we are going to take them into consideration. So you may not achieve what you initially seek to achieve in the first place. But when it comes to the throne, then there's a very different process in which one would have to adhere to that. Let's also remember this very important point. All the submissions that were made or allegedly referred to that the late Sisilo made during the Nhlapo Commission were in preparation of the act which is being used today, which was promulgated or passed in 2019. So as we sit, the only law in which this particular court can refer to is the 2019 Act dealing with how certain chiefs or the rule, the throne is decided as to who is going to benefit or who is going to be declared as the king of AmaZulu.
Let's go back to that debate about whether or not this court case has an implication on the current battle on who is the rightful heir to the throne. At some stage, the applicants, and that is the first wife of the late king and the two daughters, were saying this court matter has absolutely no bearing on who succeeds the late King Goodwill Zwelithini kaBhekuzulu, because it's the royal family that actually makes that determination. However, the counter to that was to say, well, if you're challenging the will, then you're also challenging the fact that Sibongile Dlamini-Zulu should have been installed as the regent, and by implication through her will, she is the one who appointed King Newzroom Zwelithini. Do you expect the court to make a pronouncement on that?
The court will certainly give a certain direction as to how that particular process should be. It may not deal with the merits of the matter, because it would say, I haven't been directly asked to deal with the merits as to who is going to succeed on the throne. However, what I can do is state what is the position or the legal position when it comes to how these particular processes are supposed to go, which relevant legislation is looked at, in this case the 2019 Act, which type of practices are then engaged in making sure that someone succeeds and actually occupies that particular throne. So the court will have a very good opportunity, because it is a matter that was raised, it is a matter in which both parties argued on, and they made legal submissions. So it's only appropriate that the court will then come back and say, let me help you a bit in terms of determining the legal position. I'll not pronounce on the merits of whether it was complied with or not, but let me tell you as to how that particular process legislatively and through your common law and customary law, that particular matter is attended to.
All right, and we're going to be monitoring those proceedings together. That's Mpumelelo Zikalala, the legal analyst, who is going to be in court with us this morning, Xoli, as that judgment is handed down by Judge Madondo, who's acting judge president here in the KZN division. And certainly, many will be monitoring how this unfolds, given how there's a lot now that is hinging on the succession debate and whether or not we'll be seeing King Newzroom Zwelithini actually receiving that certificate from the president and ultimately being coronated.
That's a senior reporter Ziyanda Ngcobo, live for us in KZN. Thank you very much for that update. The Zulu Nation surely will be waiting with bated breath to hear what the outcomes of that court are going to be.